It was the Greeks who looked out onto their world and saw that the land really didn't have anything to offer them, except for steep mountains, hard passes, and a lot of rock. Not really a place to call your own. So they went out. They left their island, they left their land, and they headed to the islands, where they started farming, where they raised sheep and goats, and they lived a long and happy life. We talked about that in our last video. We talked about the Mycenaeans and the Minoans. But now people are returning to Greece. And these people are the ones we call the Hellenes. The Hellenes were named after the Titan who first let his children run along the land. The Hellenes started growing small communities or kingdoms. These city-states would grow strong, but they all started out with the same type of government, with a king and rich aristocracy who ran everything while the peasants had barely anything and no voice. It is here that our story of Athens really takes place, because Athens is indecipherable from any other Greek city-state until they developed democracy. Democracy, a system where people have the opportunity to have their own voice in politics, to decide how their life is run, not to be limited by some king or some aristocrat and what they say. This will change Athens. It will elevate Athens. It will bring out some of the greatest minds in the ancient world, some that still today have probably not been surpassed. Today we are going to continue to take a look into Athens, the city-state. But to do that, we need to travel somewhere else. Somewhere that's a theater, where the story of Athens can be told in its full sound and glory. Here we are at the amphitheater. This is where comedy and tragedy came together to create drama, where stories were told, heroes were victorious in battle and doomed to fail, and the most tragic of flaws. It brought tears and pain, laughing and joy. The theater was the place where the world was acted out, and nowhere else was it better than in Athens. But the theater here was only a reference, like this, a metaphor to what really is going on. In Athens, something else was about to take place. Democracy. Now, democracies existed in other parts of Greece. Even Plato and Aristotle hint at that. Yet, Athens is where it takes hold. It starts around 578 BC with a guy named Solon. Now, Solon looked around and said, we need to have people participate in government. They could come to any government official businesses, and they formed a council of over 100 people to help lead on matters, but these were mostly aristocrats. But what Solon had done is he had put the person being governed in a position where they could hear the rules that were about to change their lives. And so he is going to set the tone for what will be an amazing journey. Our next person, Cleisthenes, is an aristocratic, he is born into an aristocratic family. And in this family, he gains the ability to lead. He becomes a great warrior and general. He's not the person that we would say, oh yes, he's yearning to set people free. He doesn't have that kind of background. He's not the rebel in Star Wars that wants to give people a voice. In fact, if anything, he'd be someone that wanted to keep them in their place. But Cleisthenes, I believe, his military background, his living with the troops, the normal people, caused him to see the world a little bit different. And he decided that men, if they're willing to die for their city, then why can't they help lead their city? And so in 408, and then again in 407, he passed massive reforms, changing the government of Greece, or the government of Athens, forever. He helped establish a democracy where people could vote. Now when I say people, he didn't mean everybody. He meant just men. Just land-owning men, free men. They couldn't be foreigners or slaves, and they certainly couldn't be women. They had to be men. Those men could lead, and they did. They voted on everything in Athens' democracy. Everything from deciding if they should start a new road to what color should we wear for this festival. Everything. And maybe you could see some problems with that. If they voted on everything, how did anything ever get done? If everyone had an opinion on what the color of the signs of the town should be, then what really matters? It's going to slow down the important things. And Athens will have some major growing pains with this system. But as democracy starts to take hold in Athens, it's going to create a wave of influence that spreads around the world. When we get to Rome, we'll see another form of democracy in the Roman Republic. But this spark, this moment, will change the history of the world forever. He called his new system Democratus. Demo meaning people, kratos meaning power. Democracy, power to the people. Thank you so much for listening today, guys. Check the questions at the end for your quiz.